Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, All the Stories. This video is later in the week than I had planned to upload it. I had plans to post 2 videos this week, and last week my eye swelled up and I didn't want to film with my eye swollen, so luckily I had a video pre-filmed that I just posted last week, my book haul. And then as soon as my eye started to go down, I caught a stomach virus and I was sick all the end of last week and the beginning of this week, so I haven't actually had time to film. And today I was feeling a little better, so I decided to go ahead and film my video. Still a little sick, so if y'all notice that I'm a little low energy in this video or anything, that is what's happening. So this is my March wrap up. So I read 13 books in March. It was a pretty good reading month. I had a lot of books that I enjoyed, some that I didn't enjoy so much, and we will discuss all of those right now. So first, before I get into the books that I read, I did have 2 books that I DNF'd in March that I want to talk about. So I'm going to get to those first, just mention them, not going to talk too much about them. So the first book that I've DNF'd in March was The School for Good and Evil, A World Without Princes. This is the second book in the series by Saman Chainani. And this book, I had problems. I mean, I had problems with the first book, but not to the point where I was going to DNF it and not finish it. But this one, I had problems where I couldn't finish it. I wasn't gonna finish it, didn't want to finish it. I got about 110 pages into this before I DNF'd it, and then it was just so problematic for me. I can't tell you why without ruining the first book, but let's just say this princess had to choose in this book between her best friend and her prince. And the way the prince goes about trying to convince her or make her choose him is just so problematic for me that I can't. And the fact that I think at the end of this book or series, the fact that I think she does end up with him, even after he does what he does in this book, I can't. So not gonna finish this. I do own the 3rd book already, so that sucks. And the 3rd book is really pretty. The covers, I love these covers on this book, and they're beautiful, but I don't think I'm going to be finishing the series. Not going to finish this, not going to read the 3rd book, so that sucks. But yeah, I didn't think I told you what this is about. This is a middle grade fantasy series about this school that trains heroes and villains, and that's all I'm going to say about it, but DNF'd it. So the second book that I DNF'd, I want y'all to hear me out before y'all judge me or y'all come for me. I'm going to try to read this book again. I just think it was the wrong time for me to pick up this book. I think it was the format wasn't working for me, and it was just a lot of things going on, and I just decided to put this book aside and pick it up again later. So that book is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This book is very popular, so sorry if this is your favorite book. Like I said, I do plan on picking this book up again, I couldn't right now. So the reason I picked this book up was because I wanted to listen to an audiobook, and my Scribd account, I had read all the audio books that I could for the month, so I had to wait until the end of the month for my subscription to renew so I can listen to new audiobooks. But for some reason, there are like certain audiobooks that you can listen to even if you've read your allotted amount, and The Raven Boys is one of them. So I saw The Raven Boys was on there, and it's one of the books on my TBR, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna listen to this. And I didn't like the narrator. I was so confused. I think I got like 50 pages into this before I DNF'd it. Like 50 pages into like the audiobook before I DNF'd it, and I was so confused. There's so many characters introduced to you all at one time. Like you meet all the Raven Boys basically in one scene, and it's just them sitting in a room talking about stuff, and I'm like, who is this character speaking? Oh wait, who is this? And they introduce all the people and give you like some of their character traits, like, oh, he's my best friend, I met him, blah blah blah, he's a bad boy. And I'm like, which one was that? Who was that? Who's talking? And then one of the characters is like, he has a strong southern accent, and I'm from the South. I can deal with the southern accent, but that accent that the narrator was giving was god awful, and it was grating on my nerves, and I couldn't bear to listen to this audiobook. So I DNF'd it, and I probably will give this another try sometime in the future. Just, it wasn't the right time for me to pick this up. So now on to the books that I actually did read and finish in March. So the first book that I read in March was A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer. This was one of my most anticipated releases of 2019, and I did enjoy this. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars, I love the character, I love the world, I love some of the characters. It was almost 5 stars, but didn't quite get there. If you don't know what this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling about this girl who has cerebral palsy, and she ends up being taken to this magical world so she can fall in love with the prince, who is cursed to turn into a monster at the end of every year. And if he doesn't get the girl to fall in love with him, the cycle repeats with the next year with a new girl. And I love this. I love the politics in this. I love the world, and I love the characters, and I would recommend. So the next book that I picked up this month was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling. This was, of course, a reread for me, and I gave it 5 stars. I am enjoying rereading this series so far. I'm loving the characters, and it's interesting to see all the things that I have forgotten about the books, because this is my first time rereading the series since I read it in middle school, and I've seen the movie so many times, and it's interesting to see all the things the books have that the movies left out that I've forgotten about. So I'm enjoying my reread, and I can't wait to get to the next one. Well, technically, I've already read Prisoner of Azkaban by the time I'm filming this, so yeah. The third book I read in March was Warcross by Marie Lu. I enjoyed this. This has been on my shelf for a good minute, and I just have been avoiding picking it up. Don't know why, but I finally picked it up, and I really enjoyed it. It was really great. I gave this book 4 stars. I loved the character, the main character. She was really interesting. I did predict the plot twist at the end. Not like all of it. I predicted like there's this evil character who's trying to ruin the game, and I did predict who the character was, like the identity of the evil character. I did guess that, but all in all, I still enjoyed it, and I still do plan on going on and reading the second book in this duology, which is Wildcard. Okay, so the 4th book that I read this month was so trying for me. I almost DNF'd 3 books this month, but I pushed through reading this book. Actually, I kind of did DNF it. I DNF'd it one night. I was so over it. I think I was like 150 pages in. I was like, you know what? I'm done. I cannot read any more of this. I'm going to DNF it. I went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up and I was like, okay, what am I about to read? Because I can't read this book. And I thought about it. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to finish this book because this is the Banana Buddies Book Club pick of the month for March. And I was like, I'm going to finish it so I can participate in the live show. So I read it, and that book is Enchanté by Guy de Trellis. I did not like this book. I don't even know how to describe it. It was so slow. The plot was not what I thought. It was very much marketed as French Revolution. Like even the tagline, Love, Magic, Revolution. The French Revolution was hardly a part of this book. Maybe like a couple of mentions of revolution coming. The French Revolution was about the lower class rising up to take on the upper class because of injustices. And in this book, our main character is a lower class citizen. She's part of the middle to lower class, and she ends up becoming an aristocrat in this. And I'm thinking, oh, she's gonna become an aristocrat and then kind of see all the corruption. But then she ends up like liking it, and she like becomes an aristocrat. And I didn't enjoy the romance. I didn't see anything interesting about it. I didn't enjoy the plot. This plot was just super slow. The ending was just weird. It just was like, oh wait, was that the climax? That was what happened? That was the end? Oh, okay. Oh, I guess the book's over. Cool, great, glad the book's over. But I just didn't like it. I liked nothing. I mean, I won't say like nothing. It wasn't the worst book ever. I gave this 2.5 stars. 2 stars. That's awkward. Something like that. I don't even care to look and see what I give this book. I think it was 2 stars, 2.5 stars. Who cares? Who knows? But the point being, I didn't like it. The next 2 books that I read were graphic novels, and I actually picked up another book, and the other book that I picked up was so long, but I'm going to talk about that because I'm going to talk about them in the order that I finished them. So I was actually read these 2 in the middle of reading another book because I needed something to break up how long that book was. So first, I read Saga Volume 1, which was a reread. I read this last year for the first time, and I read Saga Volume 1, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. I enjoyed it the first time I read it. I enjoyed it the second time I read it. This is a great graphic novel. It's like one of the first graphic I'm having problems. It is the first graphic novel that I've ever read, and I read it last year. I really enjoyed it, just never ended up reading the second one, so I decided to reread the first one because I finally bought the second one and wanted to read it. So I read the second one. This is the next book I finished. And this series is, of course, about, it's a sci-fi series about these two warring cultures or planets, and they've been at war for years, and these two people from these two different planets end up falling in love and having a child, and they're trying to escape from this war and just live their life, but that doesn't seem to be happening for them. So that's what this is about, and I really enjoyed the series. I gave both of these 5 stars, book 1 and 2. Both 5 stars, and I can't wait to buy the third one because it's real interesting. I will give a warning because this is very graphic, very violent, very sexual. There are sex scenes, so if you're a younger viewer, younger reader, I wouldn't recommend starting off with this. I would recommend reading this until you're a bit older because there's like a lot of violence and smut. The big book that I was reading, that I started before the Saga comics, but I read the comics in between just to break up this book, was The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I read this and finished this in March, and I gave this 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was a great, epic fantasy dragon story, and I loved it. I loved the romance. I loved the plot. I loved the conclusion. I really enjoyed the history of this world and finding out what the actual history of this world was, because people's view of history in this world is different depending on where you are. History or religion or whatever is different depending on where you are, and they all have different accounts of what actually happened. So I enjoyed reading this and seeing how that viewpoint changed how people saw each other, and then learning what actually happened in the past was really interesting to me. I liked the politics, I liked the characters, I liked the dragons. I will say I thought there was going to be more dragon, if that made sense. It's very multi-perspective. So the perspective of the dragon rider character was like at the least talked about perspective, kind of like in Game of Thrones where Daenerys has the least chapters. And I was expecting way more of the rider and dragon dynamic, and even in the chapters with the dragon rider, you didn't get much of the dragon in those chapters. If you read this, then you know what I'm talking about. But I still enjoyed it, still gave it 5 stars. Still would recommend this book. Then after reading that long, epic, adult, high fantasy, I really wanted to read something more light, something lighter and easier to get through. So I definitely wanted to pick up a contemporary. So the book that I picked up next was Ramona Blue by Julie Murphy. This book is about a girl named Ramona, or nicknamed Ramona Blue. Ramona is very tall, she sticks out, she has bright blue hair, and she likes girls. And she's known she likes girls for her whole life, basically, until one day our boy from her past, her childhood best friend, ends up moving back into town, and she starts to develop feelings for him. And that's where our story kind of takes off. But I loved this book. I gave Ramona Blue 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the romance. I really enjoyed the character development. I really enjoyed Ramona as a character. I loved Freddie. I loved Freddie and Ramona's relationship together. And I also appreciated the diversity in this book. Freddie is Black, and it's not just like, oh, it's mentioned and then you kind of forget about it. It's very much a part of the story. Not like very much a part of the story, but it's a part of the story. And like there was one scene in specific that I appreciated that was in here that had to do with Freddie's race, and I really appreciated that scene, and I really enjoyed this book. Definitely would recommend you reading this if you enjoy contemporaries, if you enjoy LGBTQ stories, all of that, or if you just wanted something fun to read. So the last 5 books on this list were the books that I read for Adventure-a-thon, and I didn't really do an Adventure-a-thon wrap up. I thought about doing one, but then again, like I said, all last week I wasn't feeling well. So this is going to be my Adventure-a-thon wrap up. I did read 5 books in Adventure-a-thon. I was on Team Mermaid. I finished 6 out of the 7 challenges that were there. I just didn't read the group book because I had already read it, and I was going to substitute a different book for it, but I did start Seafire which was the book I was going to substitute for the group book. I listened to it on audio, and I got maybe like a third of the way through the audiobook and didn't finish it. So there's that. But let's just jump into the books that I did finish. So the first book that I read for Adventure-a-thon was for the challenge Read a Book with a Plot Twist. And that book that I chose was Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. This is the third and final book in the Grisha trilogy, and I will say that I did enjoy, I know I've mentioned on my channel that I wasn't enjoying the Grisha trilogy, and that is still true. I didn't enjoy the Grisha trilogy as much as Six Crows, or as much as I was expecting to enjoy the Grisha trilogy. I'm not going to compare it to Six Crows, but I still wasn't enjoying the series as much as I had hoped I would. And I will say that I did enjoy Ruin and Rising more than I had enjoyed the previous books, but I mean, it still wasn't amazing. It still didn't blow me away, but I did enjoy it more than I thought I would, so I do appreciate that. I gave this book, originally I said 3, but I think I gave Siege and Storm 3, and I really did enjoy this more than Siege and Storm, so I'm thinking 3.5. On Goodreads, I think I put 4, but I'm thinking more 3.5, because, I mean, I still didn't love it, but liked it better than I thought I would. And yeah, now I can finally move on to my Six Crows reread, and then King of Scars, which I still have not read. So the next book that I read in Adventure-a-thon was for the challenge Read a Book Set in the Past, and for that I read Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I gave this book 5 stars. I loved everything about this book. I almost want to reread this book right now, even though it's only been like 2 weeks since I read it, because I just enjoyed it so much. And I almost never want to instantly reread a book, but I want to instantly reread this book because it was amazing. So I'm so glad that I bought this. I did listen to the audiobook because the audiobook is full cast, so I listened to the audiobook while physically reading along with the book, and I would recommend that because the audiobook is amazing. And I think reading along with it also enhances the audiobook experience, since there are, like, since it is told in an interview format, so you can see like the interview style and the way she like spaces some things, and then she puts, oh, the person takes a pause, and then the audiobook person, the actor, takes a pause. I don't know, I just really enjoyed the combination of reading the book while listening to the audiobook, so I would recommend the audiobook in general. And this book is probably going to be one of my favorite books of the year. I already feel it because I enjoyed it so much. I enjoyed how complex and how flawed the characters were, but they were all still good people, and they were still great characters. They were so dynamic and flawed and just intriguing, and they felt so real and raw, and I just loved this so much, and I loved the twists and turns it took at the end. Read this book. Out of all the books that I read this month, I would say if you had to choose one, read this book. So the next book I read for Adventure-a-thon was for the challenge Read a Book with a Nature Word in the title, and I read In Other Lands by Sarah Rees Brennan, and I annotated it and everything, and I really enjoyed this. I gave it 5 stars. It was not what I was expecting. I didn't know going into it what to expect, and this wasn't it. This wasn't what I was expecting, but I really enjoyed it, and it was so unique, and I can honestly say I've never read anything like it. It was so interesting to me, and I love the way it was told. I can understand some people may not like it because it can read a bit slow, or it's not as action-packed and exciting as most fantasy books are, so it can read a bit slow, but I enjoyed it personally. I don't mind a slow fantasy, and it's very character-driven, so I don't mind a slow character-driven fantasy. But if that's something you don't like, I wouldn't recommend this, but I personally loved it, and I gave it 5 stars. And this is about this boy who goes on a field trip, and he ends up discovering this magical land and going to this magic school, and it's just about his time at this school and the friends he makes and the adventures they go on, and it's really enjoyable, and I gave it 5 stars. So the next book that I read for Adventure-a-thon was for the challenge to read a book with a green cover. So for that I read Rich People Problems by Kevin Kwan. This is the 3rd and final book in the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy. I like this one more than I like the second one, but not as much as I like the first one. So yeah, my order would be like first book, third book, then second book. I gave this like 3.75 because I really wanted to give it a 4 because these books are so enjoyable, and even though they're like 500 pages, I fly through these books so fast because they're just so interesting and so funny and so enjoyable for me. But I didn't give it a 4 stars just because though I find them so enjoyable, they aren't like the best books ever. They're just really enjoyable to me, and they're really witty and fun and funny to read, but at the end of the day, I just enjoy them, but they're not like the best books ever. I would rate it higher, but I didn't like some of the perspectives. I didn't think some of the perspectives were necessary. And then you are following like a ton of people, so sometimes it can get confusing with who's who. So yeah, but I still would recommend the series because I think it's just a great time. The last book that I read in the month of March was The Thief by Megan Walling Turner. So I read this for the challenge, read the first book in the series, and I gave this 3 stars. It was good, but it wasn't great. And for such a short book, I mean, I feel like nothing happened, but the book is like 200 pages long. Well, it's about 280 pages long, and I just feel like I didn't get to know any of the characters. The plot was really generic, and I didn't get to really care about the characters that much. Maybe I didn't care as much about the characters because the book was so short, and you don't get to spend as much time with the characters as you do with a longer book and get more development with a longer book. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'm gonna continue on with the series, but it was not a bad book. It was just, I felt like the plot, which is, oh, there's some magical item that you need to find. I'm gonna take this person who is a well-known thief and hire him to find this object for me, was just a very overdone plot. It's just a very well done, well-liked plot, and very prevalent plot in fantasy, and I've seen it done better. I'm not saying this was done badly, just I've seen it done better. So yeah, so that's it, you guys. That's all 13 books that I read in March. I read some really great books in March, and I can't wait to read some more in April. So thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.